A woman sprinting toward first-class boarding kicked a yellow warning sign and violently slipped on the wet marble. Her $10,000 Hermes bag hit the floor, sliding straight into a puddle of dirty mop water. As the expensive leather soaked up the gray foam, her flawless social mask shattered. She didn't look down at her own wet shoes. She glared straight up at the elderly janitor holding the mop, immediately transferring the cost of her mistake onto the person she placed at the absolute bottom of her hierarchy. A person's morality is measured entirely by who they hand the bill to when the fault is their own. But what this woman didn't realize was that this uncontrolled outburst wasn't going to fix her bag. It was about to permanently strip away the only thing she actually cared about, her perceived superiority, all because of the quiet man in a black baseball cap sitting just 3 seats away, watching her every move. "Look what you did, you absolute idiot," she shrieked, her voice bouncing off the high glass walls of the terminal. "Do you know how much this costs? It's worth more than your entire miserable life's salary." The janitor, a man in his 60s wearing a faded blue uniform, didn't raise his voice. He just tightened his grip on the wooden handle of his mop, lowering his eyes to the wet floor. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The sign was right there. You were running." "I don't care about your pathetic sign," she snapped, stepping closer, invading his physical space. She pointed a shaking, manicured finger inches from his face. "You did this. Get on your knees and wipe it off, now." The terminal went dead silent. The usual chaotic symphony of rolling suitcases and boarding announcements faded, leaving only the low mechanical hum of the air conditioning. Dozens of travelers froze. A few instinctively pulled out their phones, the modern reflex to capture a public meltdown, but no one stepped forward. The bystander effect took over, leaving the janitor stranded on an island with her ego. "I said clean it," she repeated. Her voice dropped from a shriek to a cold, venomous hiss. She nudged the ruined, soggy leather bag closer to the toe of his worn-out work boots. "Or I will make sure you never hold a mop in this airport again. I know the operations director. I own people like you." The older man's shoulders slumped. He didn't argue back. He couldn't. The heavy, humiliating weight of needing a paycheck, of having rent due and bills to pay, crushed whatever instinct he had to defend himself. His hands, rough and calloused from decades of invisible labor, trembled slightly as he reached into his yellow plastic cart for a blue microfiber rag. He swallowed hard, breaking eye contact, and slowly began to bend his knee toward the cold, dirty marble. She crossed her arms, a tight, triumphant smile forming on her lips. She was getting exactly what she wanted: submission. She was reestablishing her dominance in the hierarchy. But right behind her, sitting completely still in the premium seating area, the man in the black baseball cap had seen enough. He wasn't holding a phone. He wasn't shaking his head in theatrical disgust. He was just watching the brutal, raw reality of how a person behaves when they believe they hold all the power, and the other person has absolutely none. He quietly folded the newspaper, resting on his lap. He didn't rush. He didn't storm over. He just stood up, his movements slow, deliberate, and carrying a heavy, undeniable gravity. As the janitor's knee hovered just an inch above the dirty water, the crushing reality of class division hung in the air. If you have ever had to bite your tongue and swallow your dignity just to protect your paycheck from someone who thought they owned you, hit the like button right now. You know exactly how heavy that silence is." The woman's smile widened. She was seconds away from the ultimate surrender. But before the old man's knee could touch the marble, a large, firm hand gently gripped his shoulder, stopping him mid-motion. "You don't need to do that, brother." A deep, steady voice echoed in the quiet space. The woman spun around, her eyes wide, pulling in a sharp breath to unleash her venom on whoever dared to interrupt her power trip. But the words died instantly in her throat. Standing right beside the janitor, wearing a plain gray sweater and pulling the black baseball cap slightly up, was Denzel Washington. The woman's posture instantly morphed. The snarling rage evaporated, instantly replaced by a frantic, desperate scramble to salvage her social currency. She smoothed her expensive coat, her voice shifting into a high-pitched, artificial sweetness. "Oh my God, Denzel! Hi. I am so sorry you had to witness this," she laughed nervously, pointing a manicured finger at the puddle. "This clumsy guy just completely ruined my morning, and you know how stressful flying can be." She stepped forward, expecting the actor to smile back. She expected him to nod, to validate her frustration, to join her in that exclusive, high-status bubble where the invisible workers simply do not matter. She was waiting for him to look at her. He didn't. Denzel's gaze never shifted to the woman. It was as if her voice, her frantic apology, and her $10,000 bag simply did not exist. He kept his eyes locked entirely on the janitor, his expression warm, grounded, and completely undisturbed. "I'm Denzel," he said, extending his right hand. The older man, stunned and still holding the damp microfiber rag in his left hand, slowly reached out and shook it. "Marcus, sir." "Good to meet you, Marcus," Denzel said, his voice calm, carrying the quiet, gravitational pull of a man who doesn't need to shout to own the room. "How long have you been keeping this place running?" The woman, standing less than 2 feet away, froze. Her brain couldn't process the social math of the moment. She had just deployed her most polished, high-status mask, and it had slammed into a brick wall of absolute indifference. In her world, fame and money recognized fame and money. The janitor was supposed to be the invisible one. Denzel," she stammered, stepping slightly to the side, physically trying to force herself into his field of vision. "I'm a huge fan. I was just—" Still. Nothing. Not a blink. Not a flinch. Not a single millimeter of acknowledgement. He didn't lecture her. He didn't deliver a Hollywood speech about equality or how money doesn't buy class. That would have given her exactly what she wanted. Validation that she was someone worth arguing with. Instead, Denzel deployed the most devastating psychological response possible to a narcissist. He erased her. 32 years, Marcus replied, his voice shaking slightly, but his posture straightening as he realized the famous actor was genuinely listening to him. Worked the night shift mostly. Just moved to mornings. 32 years, Denzel nodded, finally letting go of the man's hand. That's a lot of long hours on your feet. That takes real discipline. The woman's face flushed a deep, ugly shade of red. The silence in the terminal had changed. It was no longer the stunned, helpless silence of bystanders watching a train wreck. It was the heavy, judging silence of a crowd watching an emperor realize they have no clothes. Sociologists call this phenomenon the status discrepancy crash. It happens when a person's projected, artificial worth is suddenly and violently rejected by a higher authority, leaving them socially bankrupt. True power isn't the ability to demand a manager or scream at an employee. It's the quiet confidence of knowing you never have to prove your worth to a stranger. "Excuse me," the woman finally snapped, her voice trembling, stripping away the fake sweetness. "I am standing right here." Denzel slowly turned. He didn't look angry. He didn't look disgusted. His expression was completely blank, carrying the hollow, passing glance you might give a flickering fluorescent light bulb on the ceiling. He looked at her for exactly 1 second. Then he smoothly turned his back to her, facing Marcus again. "You take care of yourself, Marcus," Denzel said quietly, patting the older man on the shoulder. "Don't let anyone make you forget the value of honest work." He didn't wait for the woman to speak again. He simply adjusted his cap, picked up his small carry-on bag, and walked calmly toward the boarding gate, stepping right over the soggy, ruined luxury bag as if it were a piece of discarded trash. The woman was left standing in the middle of the concourse. No one was clapping. There was no cinematic music playing. There was just her, the janitor she had tried to break, and 50 strangers who now saw her exactly for what she was. As the woman bent down to retrieve the dripping leather from the dirty floor, the cold reality of the room set in. Nobody offered her a napkin. Nobody looked at her with pity. At that exact second, every single person standing in that terminal understood a quiet, brutal truth. That $10,000 bag didn't make her valuable. It was never a symbol of actual wealth. It was just an overpriced shield she used to hide a deep, crippling insecurity. She screamed at a janitor, demanding he get on his knees, because she desperately needed someone to feel smaller than her so she could feel big. She relied on the price tag of her accessories to force compliance from the world. But when true power actually walked into the room, it didn't wear a price tag. It didn't need to scream to be seen. True power wore a plain gray sweater, spoke softly, and completely dismantled her entire social hierarchy without raising its voice. The loudest person in the room is always the weakest. Marcus quietly dipped his blue microfiber rag back into the yellow plastic bucket. The small wheels of his cart squeaked as he moved a few inches to the right, steadily continuing his job. He had his dignity entirely intact. She was left standing alone, holding nothing but a ruined piece of wet leather and the crushing weight of her own irrelevance. This isn't just about an airport terminal, and it's not just about Denzel Washington. It's about every time you sit in a meeting, stand at a cash register, or walk into a family dinner, and you encounter someone who tries to use their title, their money, or their loud voice to shrink you down. They want the fight. They want you to argue back, because arguing validates their existence. It proves they matter. But Denzel just gave you the ultimate playbook. You don't defeat an ego by screaming louder. You defeat it by starving it. You all know exactly who I'm talking about. You have that one person in your life right now, a toxic coworker, an arrogant relative, or an old friend, who constantly talks down to waiters, name drops to get a table, or uses their bank account as their entire personality. The next time they try to pull rank on you, or the next time they try to make someone else feel small just to inflate their own ego, do not waste your energy. Do not exhaust yourself trying to explain basic human decency to someone who refuses to hear it. Silence is your most lethal weapon. Use this video as your shield. Send this directly to them right now, without typing a single word of context, and let Denzel's absolute silence do the talking for you. Let them watch this and silently realize exactly which character they are in the story.